Hey, hi everyone, John Lee here, aka the Property Shark. Today, we are going to talk about a very important topic. We're going to talk about money, alright? So, in a time like this, where there's a pandemic going on, it's even more important what you do with your money. On a very serious note, many businesses and cities began their lockdowns. Businesses are shutting off, schools are getting closed, workers are getting laid off. The most important thing here is to make sure you look after your health and safety. So definitely practice washing your hands, using a lot of hand sanitizer. Don't forget to wear your face mask when you're going out. Keep a distance of at least 2 meters when you're interacting with people, and stay inside if you can, because we really don't want to put people at risk, especially your loved ones or people that might be more prone to being sick and catching the virus and being critical conditions because of that. So again, let's all work together to flatten out the curve. Let's practice social distancing. This is a great opportunity for everyone to kind of unwind, reconnect with nature, kind of reconnect with their self, right? Either through meditating or deep breathing exercises, and also really pick up that hobby of yours that you've always wanted to try out, or do new things, explore around. It's the best time for you to get out there, enjoy the sun, take it easy a little, good time to reflect, plan ahead, and do all of that. So, let's talk about the financial difficulties going forward. The stock market is on sale. Most people are definitely might lose their job. And if you burn through your emergency fund and you have no money saved up, what's more important right now than ever is to figure out how to protect your money, how to protect your assets. We could talk about where you should park your money to get the highest return on investments, potentially. But in a time like this where the stakes are high, you could lose your job, you might not have enough emergency fund to go through, it's more than ever, that I feel like we should talk about how we should preserve your money. So, here's what you need to do to protect it from market fluctuations, to stay afloat through market uncertainty. And really the goal here is to not make a tremendous amount of profits, but it's to have enough money to keep that roof over your head, to put food on the table, to look after your basic necessities, look after your family, look after your loved ones. That's the most important thing, especially in a time of crisis and pandemic like today. So, the number one thing that you have to figure out is how to reduce your spending, because what we know for a fact is it's a two-way street, right? So you have money coming in and money going out. So in a certain situation like this where the money flowing in is very ambiguous, it's very uncertain, you really have to track the money going out, right? Because if this money coming in is limited, but you also have expenses that you must pay out, then we have a problem, especially if you eat and you burn through your emergency fund. So today I'm going to be telling you exactly step by step what you should be doing with your money in a time of crisis, in a time of pandemic like we are seeing today with the coronavirus going around. Now this could last up to 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, or even 8 months or more than a year. So we really don't know how long this is going to play out. So it's really important that you look after your money. And the number one thing that I recommend you to do is to get a budget tracker. So something like Mint or something like YouNeedABudget. These are great tools for you to track your spending, and realistically speaking, any budget tracker would be sufficient. But the goal here is you're trying to find a way to save more money. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you'll always feel like you can save more. And I really want to stress the importance of getting in the habit of doing that, especially in a time of uncertainty like this. And this budget tracker is going to be your holy grail in terms of how you allocate your spending, especially in a time where you need a budget. So I really want you to pick a tracker, right? It could be any tracker that you use. Link all of the accounts, your bank accounts, to the trackers. Again, they've done it in a way where if you're concerned about your account being hacked, it should be relatively safe. And they do it in a way where they pull data. I mean, you can look more into this, but not to worry. Well, I should say you should do your research. You should do your research on this topic if you are concerned about privacy. But personally, I use Mint and haven't had any issues with it. And I link all of my accounts to this website, and it'll pull out all my data from my different accounts and credit cards and things like that. And I want you to review your spending for the past 90 days. Now, this is very important because, again, this is going to set the holy grail. This is going to set the exact distribution of your funds going forward. And you'll be surprised because a lot of the times the small unnecessary expenses will fall through the cracks. And I agree with you. It's going to be really uncomfortable for you to dive into your expenses because it's very easy to just push it off to the side and be like, it doesn't hurt to grab a latte today. It doesn't hurt to, go out and buy a pair of shoes tomorrow. I have enough money in my account, right? So I understand where you're coming from, but, I really want you to try to keep an open mind because this is going to help you get over this, right? And stay afloat and be on the positive side in terms of having money available to invest back into the financial markets. We'll get into that later. And it might take a lot of work. So I really want you to break down your expenses into two categories. Number one category is the mandatory spending, which is the bare minimum amount that you need to live on, right? These are your expenses that will continue to go through regardless if you have money coming in or out. Your home expenses, your mortgage, your utility bills, your car payments, your car loans, your student loans, your health insurance, food, right? Food is a big expense. Gas is a big expense as well. What are the expenses that you have to spend on in order for you to get by on a day-to-day basis? This is the bare minimum amount that you need to spend on to survive for you and your family, of course. So the next part is to have a section called discretionary spending. So you have a section mandatory spending and discretionary spending. Discretionary spending, pretty easy to break it down for you. Your coffee expenses, eating out, going out, nightclubs, travel, right? Buying clothes, buying shoes, etc. These are things that you want, everything that you want, but you don't necessarily need to have in order for you to live and survive, right? And I would really start off by looking at, some of the smaller expenses that you incur on a daily basis. The biggest thing to look out for here are subscriptions. So if you have a gym membership or you have a Netflix subscription, but you really don't spend a lot of time on these platforms or go to the gym, it might make more sense for you to cancel these subscriptions and use a pay-per-use kind of model where you pay for a certain show or you pay for a certain movie when you're going to watch it, because without knowingly, you're going to be saving a lot more money than you think. And here's what I want you to do. I want to challenge you. Write down in the comments how much you think you spend on discretionary expenses. So everything that you want to have but you don't necessarily need, right? And be honest. Just guess how much you think, and after you do that, I want you to pause this video and go calculate all your expenses, right? And I want you to comment on your comment of how much you actually spend. And I'll be honest here, okay? Don't lie to me. You'd be surprised at how little that amount of discretionary spending you think you're gonna have versus the reality of the situation. Because, like I said, a lot of the small expenses tend to go through the cracks, and it might not seem like a lot, but believe it or not, it does add up over time. And when you kind of categorize everything in a month, then it makes a big difference for you. So, you'd be surprised. You're gonna find yourself saving a couple $100 a month, which isn't much, but it definitely does add up. And next thing I want to do is cut out all the non-essential spending. So after you have a budget, right, you've broken down your mandatory spending and discretionary spending. From your discretionary spending, I want you to trim that down. So I like to call this going on a financial diet, where you really try to stay lean. It's kind of like you're going on a diet per se, where you start counting your calories, you start tracking your food intake, you cut out all the junk food, all the fast food, all the non-essential food items that you put into your body. So it's kind of like that too. It's a financial diet, okay? You cut out all the non-essential spending habits or items or services that you are used to having on a day-to-day basis. And I want you to monitor your daily spending with Mint. So again, it's easy if you have a credit card, right? Mint does a great job of transferring all these transactions over, so it's actually easy for you to log your expenses, and I do recommend that. Definitely, it's easier if you have a credit card to track your expenses versus if you're spending money. Sometimes it's harder for you to manually input all the data, and you might get busy and you might forget to do some of those expenses, or you might forget to track some of those expenses. So if you use a credit card, that's great. Make sure you input everything into Mint. And what I love about Mint is based off your overview of your past 90 days, you can now allocate and set budgets for your mandatory expenses, for your discretionary expenses, and break it down per subject and per category. Like for food, for gas, for utilities, you can break that down and set a budget for each item. And every day I would recommend that you go on this platform to kind of review how you're standing in terms of reality of the situation versus how much your budget you've allocated, and just to see if you're on track to meet your budget, or over exceed or under exceed, and you can adjust accordingly. So so after you do that, so again, I have my notes here. Obviously, I want to make sure I give you guys the juiciest, the best tips, and I've spent a lot of time making the notes. So I hope you can appreciate that I'm going the extra mile. I'm just not going off my tongue here. I'm actually going the extra mile. I have all the notes right now here, and I'm just gonna be real. I'm gonna be raw, right? You guys know, everyone knows, I'm not just gonna be able to spit out all these tips and advice off the top of my tongue, because that's not gonna be the best advice. So what I want to do here now is, after you cut down on all the non-essential spending, the next thing you want to do is to save money. Now, for the money that you've saved up, it's really important that you build up your emergency fund. Now, you might already have an emergency fund built up, but I would buff it up a little. I would make an extra emergency fund. I would really, try to to have double the amount saved up. So if you have a 3 months emergency fund, I would save up at least 6 months. And the reason for that is because you want to have an extra insurance policy in the event that things don't go well. Quite frankly, you don't want to sell your investments at a loss because you have to get funds to get by in the event that you lose your job, for example. I hope you get the point. So it is important. So with especially in a pandemic or a situation like this, again, it's very important that you save up at least 6 to 9 months of living expenses, and you want to put this money aside. Now, the best place to put this money aside would be to put it in a high interest savings account. So some of the better high interest savings accounts, in Canada, that's offering Canada, Manulife, has a good one. EQ Bank has a pretty good one. Simply, Tangerine. These are more of the online banks, so they are able to definitely offer a better interest rate for you, and they are insured as well. So because they don't have physical branches, so they're able to kind of cut costs and kind of reimburse that back to their clients. And I would really recommend having a high interest online savings account. I personally have one, and haven't had any issues with it. I use Manulife, but I've also signed up for EQ Bank as well. But the point of that is I would do my research online and just to see how the reviews are for each of these specific banks. Specifically, I would look at number one, customer service. If you have an issue, how easy is it for you to reach a representative from the bank to solve that issue? And you'll find that some of the banks have better customer service than others, and sometimes other banks don't have that friendly of a customer service, and it's hard to reach a representative really when you really need to. Another thing to consider is the interface and the ease of use of the platform that you're using. For us millennials, it shouldn't be too big of a problem, but you want to make sure that everything is nicely laid out and easily accessible and easy for you to navigate through the platform to get what you need to get done. Also, I would look at some of their fees, especially transferring fees. What it costs you to take money out of that account or transfer money out of that savings account. Also look at the penalties as well involved. And one thing to note here is to really look out for the interest rates, because I know sometimes they have a promo interest rate that they'll give you for 3 months, and then it goes back to their normal, not so high interest rate savings account. So just make sure you watch out for that as well. And you really pick a bank that has great customer service, has great reputation, great reviews, has an easy interface for you to use, easy to transfer money in and out, not a lot of penalties. Also, you want to watch out the interest rate, if it's just a promo rate or if it's actually a rate that's going to be there for the long run. So that's what I would do. And one thing to really keep in mind is that the interest rates are probably going to be going down and going down even more, but that's okay. The point of parking your money there is to keep it somewhere safe and to also make up some money to cover for the cost of inflation, etc. And really you want to park their money there because for liquidity reasons, in case of an emergency or of an event happening, you want to be able to access those funds right away. And next I would really recommend is, if you want a better interest rate and for a fact that you're not going to access the money right away, I would recommend looking at some GICs. A GIC is a guaranteed income certificate. Usually you lock the money in anywhere between 6 months and 10 years. Obviously, the longer you lock the money in, the better the interest rates are. But then again, you have less flexibility with that money. In the event that you need to move that money out, I would really recommend that you review the penalties and the fees associated with taking money out and prior to the term of your guaranteed income certificate. But there definitely are some good options out there where they have flexible terms. Some companies or banks even offer you no penalties for early withdrawal. So that's really important. You want to make sure you keep this money that's saved up, that for liquidity purpose, and you have some sort of stable income to cover the cost of insurance. Now, let's tackle debt. So the number one thing about debt is if you have a high interest recurring debt, for example, if you have credit card payments where you've only paid the minimum amount every single month, it's really important that you pay down those debts, because in a situation of uncertainty like this, you really don't want your interest to accrue and for that to come bite you in the ass later, essentially, if there are some financial difficulties that you face in the coming months, right? So and after you look after all the debts, I would pay it down to as much as I can. So save up for an emergency fund, and after you do that, pay off all the unnecessary debts that you can, so you don't pay all the unnecessary interest over and over and over again. And next but not least, do the best to keep your job. Whether you're working remotely from home or you're working at the office, always do your best to help your boss, to help your coworkers. This is your time to shine, because as bad as the outlook may be and as uncertain as the future may be, this is the time where you want to make sure that you have your survival mode turned on, and you do everything that you can to survive and keep your job. And another thing that's great to do as well is to have a side hustle. So nowadays, Uber, Lyft, Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes, these are great platforms and opportunities to make a couple extra bucks on the side, and to be relatively safe in a time like this where there's a pandemic going on. And after we have everything sorted out, so we've budgeted, we know exactly what your minimum expenses are, we've trimmed down your unnecessary expenses, we've have money saved up for the emergency fund for 6 to 9 months. After that, we paid off all the unnecessary debt, especially the reoccurring high interest debt that we have. We're doing all of this because we want to make sure we have some money saved up for investments. So let's talk about investments briefly. Definitely, if you have a tax-free savings account, that would be really important. If you don't have one, to open one. And since 2009, there are annual contribution limits. But the good thing is, if you don't use up that limit, it gets carried forward to the next year. And any amount that you make in the account is tax-free, absolutely tax-free. So I highly recommend you looking to getting a tax-free savings account. And in terms of what to invest in, I'll make another video about this, but just briefly, cash is king, right? You definitely want to have cash on the side, cash saved up. It's liquid, easy to access. You can use it for the emergency needs. Next best thing to invest in that's relatively safe would be index funds such as the Dow Jones Industrial Average or the Nasdaq as well. And what's so good about the index fund? It's a safer bet, right? Because it's hard for people to time the market, and no one can really do well. In fact, the majority of the investors lose money if they try to pick out winning stocks and time the market. Even Warren Buffett thinks that 99% of the investors should really invest in index funds. Less volatile, relatively safe. So I would go with that, especially in a time like this where we're seeing, a lot of the stocks and index funds going on sale like crazy. This is the right time to buy, depending on your situation. And the next best thing that some people like to have too are precious metals. So I do hold some silver coins, not much. I have some gold too. So depending on your situation, it might be good to hold some of these precious metals. In case anything happens with the financial markets and the pandemic doesn't get cured, you have something of value that you can exchange for money to get by as well. So with that being said, I'm really excited. The coronavirus is a pandemic for sure, but I'm really excited for people to figure out how to allocate their money, how to best utilize that money so then they can capitalize on the next financial uptick, especially in the stock market. For the past 100 years, we've experienced 94 years of positive growth and only 6 years of negative downturn. So everything's going good. This is only temporarily, and in the near future, we'll definitely see the market swing up again. Thanks again for watching till the very end. Hope you found tremendous amount of value for this. I'll definitely link some links down below for you. And thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to subscribe, smash the like button, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!